Snow began falling before sunrise, light at first and then thicker, as if the sky was slowly closing in on the quiet town in Vermont, and inside the warm but uneasy house, Daniel stood near the front door holding his gloves while watching his older brother Mark rush through last-minute plans, speaking fast about flights, meetings, and how the trip would only be for a few days, though everyone knew those words had been said before. Christmas music played softly from the radio, but it felt out of place, almost mocking the moment, because Mark was leaving on Christmas week, and Daniel had not planned to stay at all, yet here he was, nodding, helping carry a bag, pretending this was normal, while Emma stood a few steps back near the hallway, quiet, polite, and holding herself together with careful calm, her smile gentle but thin, the kind people wear when they don't want others to worry. When Mark finally hugged Daniel and thanked him for staying behind just in case, Daniel felt a strange weight settle in his chest, because he knew he was not staying just for the house, and as the front door closed and the car disappeared into the falling snow, the silence inside became heavy, not empty but full of things unsaid, memories hanging in the air like the smell of pine from the Christmas tree, and Daniel suddenly became aware of how alone they were together, two adults tied to the same family but living very different lives. Emma broke the quiet first, offering coffee with a soft voice, and they moved into the kitchen like strangers learning the shape of a space they both already knew, speaking politely about the weather, the roads, how fast winter had come this year, while Daniel noticed small things, the tired look in her eyes, the way she paused before speaking, how carefully she chose her words, and he realized this Christmas was not only lonely for him. They sat across from each other at the table meant for many people, plates untouched, decorations glowing, and the house seemed too big, filled with echoes of laughter from years before, when Mark was always home and Emma still believed Christmas meant togetherness without effort. Daniel felt pulled between comfort and discomfort, wanting to help, wanting to leave, wanting to say something kind but not knowing what would be safe, because Emma was his brother's wife and the lines mattered, even when feelings tried to blur them. And as evening came and the snow piled higher against the windows, Daniel understood this was not just a visit anymore but the start of something uncertain, something quiet and emotional, something that would test his heart long before Christmas morning arrived. The days after Mark left passed in a rhythm that felt both familiar and strange, as Daniel and Emma moved around the house with careful coordination, cooking meals together, washing dishes side by side, and slowly filling the silence with small talk that became more personal with each passing hour. And at first, they spoke of safe topics, work deadlines, old family memories, favorite holiday movies, but gradually the conversation deepened, revealing fears and regrets that neither had shared with anyone else. Emma spoke about how lonely she sometimes felt even when surrounded by people, about the way she worried that her life with Mark was moving too fast and leaving her behind, while Daniel admitted to his own struggles with failed relationships and missed chances, the feeling of always being the one who stayed when others moved on. And in the quiet evenings, they found themselves laughing at the same jokes, catching glances that lingered too long, and feeling a warmth that was comforting yet dangerous, because it blurred boundaries neither wanted to cross. One night, a snowstorm knocked out the power, and they lit candles around the living room, the flickering light making the shadows dance across the walls and filling the space with an intimacy that surprised them both. And as they sat near the fireplace, sipping cocoa and sharing stories about childhood hopes, unspoken thoughts hovered in the air, almost tangible, as if the storm outside mirrored the tension between them, a mixture of longing, understanding, and caution. And though neither acted on it, the closeness of their hands, the softness in their voices, and the moments when their eyes met left a memory that neither could ignore, a quiet reminder that Christmas had created a fragile bubble where emotions could surface safely but also dangerously. And Daniel, lying awake that night, realized he was standing on emotional ground he had never intended to explore, a place where care and attraction intertwined, leaving him both excited and guilty. And Emma, in her own room, stared at the falling snow outside, thinking of how strange and tender it was to feel truly seen by someone who was not meant to change her life, yet somehow had. And as the storm continued and the world outside became a white blur, both understood that the days ahead would be delicate, full of unsaid words and quiet tensions, a dance of hearts in a house designed for comfort but now charged with unspoken emotion that neither knew how to handle, yet neither could ignore. Christmas Eve arrived with a calm that felt heavier than the falling snow outside, and Daniel and Emma moved through the house with a strange mixture of ease and tension, baking cookies together in the kitchen. The warmth of the oven filling the room and soft smells of cinnamon and chocolate wrapping around them like a quiet comfort, as they joked and teased, stealing bites and laughing at small mistakes, but beneath the laughter, both felt the weight of the unspoken. How much this holiday, meant for family and joy, had become an emotional turning point neither had anticipated. Later, they settled by the fireplace, the lights of the Christmas tree blinking softly and casting gentle shadows, and Emma spoke in a low voice about how she hadn't expected to feel this connected to someone outside of her marriage, how she appreciated Daniel's company more than she could safely admit, and Daniel listened, his heart tightening at every word, understanding the depth of her loneliness, her longing, and the unspoken boundaries that kept them from crossing lines they both knew existed, yet felt increasingly drawn toward breaking. The conversation meandered between memories of past holidays, dreams for the future, and the quiet acknowledgement of feelings they could not act upon, each sentence carrying both warmth and tension, each glance lingering just a moment too long, making the air between them thick with emotion. And though neither spoke words of love, the closeness, the almost touch of their hands, the way their eyes met across the flickering light, created a charged intimacy that neither could ignore. Daniel wrestled with the pull in his chest, knowing that expressing his feelings could hurt Emma, Mark, and even himself, and yet the desire to comfort her, to stay close in this fragile, snowy world, was almost unbearable. While Emma felt torn between loyalty and longing, the quiet firelight highlighting the conflict in her eyes as she realized how much she trusted Daniel, how much she wanted to lean on him, yet understood the dangers of doing so. As the night stretched on, they shared a silence that spoke louder than words, the kind of silence where hearts communicate in glances and subtle gestures, where the warmth of the room contrasted with the cold outside, and both recognized that this Christmas Eve had become a moment suspended in time, a memory that would remain even when Mark returned. And despite the tension and almost romantic pull, Daniel made a choice to honor the boundaries, to protect Emma, and to step back emotionally, knowing that love sometimes means restraint, that connection does not always lead to action, and that this night, beautiful and tender, would be a memory of what might have been, held gently and respectfully in their hearts, a moment of emotional truth wrapped in holiday light, warmth, and quiet longing. The morning after Christmas arrived with soft sunlight reflecting off the snow, and Daniel moved through the house with a quiet heaviness, packing his bag while the scent of fresh pine from the tree and lingering cookie crumbs reminded him of the nights spent laughing and talking with Emma, memories that now felt both warm and bittersweet. Emma stood by the door, watching him carefully, her expression a mixture of gratitude, sadness, and something unspoken that neither dared to name, and when she spoke, her voice was calm but layered with emotion, telling him he did not have to leave so soon, that she had grown used to his presence and that the house felt emptier already. And Daniel looked at her, feeling the weight of every unsaid word between them, understanding the depth of the bond they had quietly formed over the past days, a bond that had been tested by boundaries, loyalty, and unspoken attraction, yet had remained respectful, tender, and emotionally profound. He told her softly that he needed to leave, that returning to his own life was necessary. Yet his tone carried a warmth and care that reflected how difficult it was to step away, and when they hugged, it was long, heartfelt, and careful, a physical acknowledgement of connection without overstepping, a silent promise that their shared moments would be remembered and cherished but never misused. And as he walked to the car, he felt the pang of longing and the weight of restraint, knowing he had chosen the harder, right path even though it left a quiet ache in his chest. Later, Mark called, cheerful and unaware, thanking Daniel for staying behind and helping Emma during the holidays, and Daniel smiled faintly, hiding the complex feelings that had built in the quiet of the house, feeling relief, satisfaction, and sadness all at once. And when he returned home, a letter from Emma awaited him, her handwriting familiar and steady, expressing gratitude, describing how she and Mark were working on their marriage, how she valued Daniel's kindness and strength, and though she carefully maintained boundaries, she acknowledged that their time together had meant more than words could say, leaving Daniel to fold the letter with care, feeling the warmth of connection and the ache of absence simultaneously. As days turned into months, the memories of that snowy Christmas lingered, quiet but vivid, a reminder of emotional closeness, self-restraint, and the kind of love that is not always meant to be lived openly but remembered tenderly. And Daniel realized that some Connections are meant to shape the heart without altering the course of life, that some love stories exist in the spaces between words, in glances, in shared laughter and warmth, and that this Christmas, with its quiet snow, intimate conversations, and lingering touches, had changed him, had shown him the beauty of care, restraint, and respect, leaving him with a memory that would last forever, a gentle, emotional imprint of what could have been, held safely in his heart, powerful in its quietness, and beautiful in its restraint.
Emma never planned to go out that Saturday night. She wanted a quiet evening at home with a cup of tea and a book she had been trying to finish for weeks. But her best friend, Lily, kept calling, insisting she'd come to a small family gathering at their lake house outside Seattle. Emma finally agreed, mostly to stop the convincing messages. And partly because she realized she had been avoiding people for too long. She had been stuck in her routine work home, sleep pant. She felt like she needed a change. Even if she didn't say it out loud, when she arrived, she instantly felt out of place. The lake house was warm and cozy, with soft lights hanging across the deck and the quiet sound of music playing from a speaker near the kitchen. Everyone there seemed to know each other. People laughed in small groups, telling old stories and catching up on life. Emma stood near the doorway for a few minutes, unsure where to stand or who to talk to. Lily hugged her tightly and introduced her to a few relatives, but everyone was busy talking. And Emma felt herself fading into the background like usual. That's when she noticed him, Daniel. She had seen photos of Lily's family before, but never met him. He was in his early 40s, tall, calm, with a thoughtful expression rather than the loud confidence most people use to get attention. He wasn't trying to entertain anyone. He wasn't holding the spotlight. He was just sitting near the fireplace with a cup of coffee, listening more than speaking. Something about that quiet confidence made Emma pause. Lily noticed them both staring and waved her over. "Emma, this is my Uncle Daniel," said casually before rushing off to help in the kitchen. Emma sat beside him because there wasn't anywhere else to sit. She didn't want to stand alone. They began with polite conversation, weather, travel, work. Nothing special at first. But unlike most people, Daniel didn't ask questions just to be polite. When Emma spoke, he actually listened. He looked her in the eyes, not distracted, not checking his phone, not waiting for his turn to talk. That made her feel unexpectedly safe. Their conversation grew deeper as the evening went on. She talked about why she felt tired of routine and how she often felt like she was moving through life without direction. She didn't usually admit things like that to people, especially strangers. But with him, the words came easily. Daniel shared small parts of his own life, too not dramatic, just honest. He talked about traveling in his 20s, choosing work over personal life for too long, and learning the value of meaningful relationships. His voice was calm, almost reflective. Like he wasn't telling stories to impress her, but simply allowing her to understand him. Time passed unnoticed. At some point, the crowd thinned. People began leaving, hugging each other goodbye. The music got lower, the lights grew softer, and the night air from the open door felt cool against Emma's face. She realized she hadn't felt this present in a long time. No distractions, no noise, just a quiet connection she didn't expect. She wasn't sure if it was admiration, curiosity, or simply the comfort of being understood, but she knew it mattered, right? When she thought their conversation had come to a natural end, Daniel said something that froze her thoughts completely. He spoke slowly, choosing each word carefully, his voice steady and gentle. "Most people look for someone who makes life easier," he said, eyes still on the dim firelight. "But sometimes the right person is the one who makes you grow, even if that growth is uncomfortable." Emma blinked, stunned. It sounded simple, but it hit her deeper than anything she had heard in years. She had spent so much time choosing safety relationships that were familiar. Jobs that didn't require risk, people who didn't challenge her. She never realized how much she avoided growth disguised as comfort. Daniel didn't say it with intention to impress her. He wasn't giving advice. It felt like something he learned from his own life, something he wished he had known earlier. He said it softly, almost like speaking to himself. Emma looked at him differently after that, more aware, more curious, and suddenly more cautious. She wasn't used to feeling pulled towards someone she barely knew, especially someone connected to her best friend's family. It felt like entering emotional territory she wasn't prepared for. She didn't want anything complicated. She didn't even know why her heart reacted. She only knew that his presence felt powerful in a quiet way. She tried to smile, even though she felt something heavy forming in her chest. "That's a strong thing to say," she whispered. Daniel simply nodded. "It's something I learned too late," he replied. The room grew silent again, but not awkward, just full of unspoken thoughts. Lily suddenly walked over, cheerful as always, breaking the moment without noticing anything unusual. She grabbed Emma's arm playfully and said, "Come help me choose music. You two look too serious." Emma stood up, but she glanced back at Daniel before walking away. He offered a kind, steady smile, nothing suggestive, nothing improper. Just a quiet acknowledgement of the moment they shared. As Emma walked toward the kitchen, her heart felt unsteady. She didn't know why one conversation could change how she saw herself, or why a man she met only hours ago could make her question the direction of her life. She didn't want to read too much into it. Maybe it meant nothing. Maybe it meant everything. All she knew was that when she drove home that night, the lake lights reflecting on her windshield, she kept replaying his words again and again, feeling something awaken inside her, a feeling she couldn't define and wasn't sure she should. She wasn't falling in love. She wasn't planning anything. She just felt seen in a way she hadn't in a long time, and that alone was enough to change something deep within her. After that first evening at the lake house, Emma tried to push her thoughts aside. She told herself it was just a single conversation, one fleeting moment she might never feel again. But life had other plans. Over the next few weeks, she kept running into Daniel in unexpected places: family dinners, weekend gatherings, even at local cafes where Lily insisted on meeting him for casual visits. Each encounter was brief, polite, normal, but underneath the ordinary, something quietly shifted between them. Daniel wasn't flirtatious, loud, or overbearing. He didn't try to capture her attention with jokes or grand gestures. He simply existed in a way that made her feel both calm and aware at the same time. He had a way of making her feel heard, even in passing, and it was unsettling in a way she hadn't expected. She wasn't used to people treating her like her thoughts, dreams, and fears mattered without asking anything in return. Most of the time, people just nodded and smiled. But he listened. And every time he did, Emma found herself drawn to him a little more. One evening, they ended up alone on Lily's porch after everyone else had gone inside. Rain fell softly, a gentle rhythm against the roof, and the city lights blurred through the mist. Emma felt the quiet press against her skin, and for a moment, she almost believed the world had stopped. Daniel didn't speak immediately. He just watched the rain, holding his cup of coffee in both hands. Emma sat beside him, careful not to close the distance too much. Her chest felt heavier than usual, but it wasn't panic. It was anticipation. Finally, she spoke, her voice low. "Why did you say that thing about growth and fear?" He turned to her slowly, his expression calm but thoughtful. "Because I spent too much of my life choosing comfort over truth," he said quietly, "and I don't want to repeat that mistake." Emma felt a strange mix of emotions. She wasn't expecting confession, advice, or deep revelations at a casual family gathering. And yet, there it was, laid bare between them. She could feel the sincerity in his words, the weight of someone who had lived, learned, and seen what it meant to settle for easy choices. Her heart stirred with an unfamiliar feeling, one she wasn't ready to name. It wasn't romance, not exactly, but it was something that left her breathless, aware of every small movement, every subtle glance. Lily suddenly appeared in the doorway, laughing about something trivial with a tray of snacks, breaking the quiet. Emma forced herself to smile and stood, feeling a rush of awkwardness, even though Daniel didn't look uncomfortable. He only nodded gently, as if acknowledging the fleeting moment without needing it to last forever. It was a small gesture, yet it left Emma thinking long after Lily disappeared back into the house. In the following days, Emma caught herself replaying every detail of that night. The calm in his voice, the way he made her feel understood. The honesty that wasn't meant to impress anyone, it all stayed in her mind. She realized she was beginning to notice small things she hadn't before. The way his eyes reflected curiosity. The faint smile when someone said something clever. The way he listened without judgment. It was confusing because he was Lily's uncle, a man tied to her friend's family. There was an invisible boundary she knew she couldn't cross. And yet her feelings grew quietly stronger. During one family dinner, Emma found herself seated across from him. The room was filled with chatter, laughter, and the clinking of silverware. She caught his gaze briefly, and he returned it with the same gentle attention as always. No words passed between them, but something shifted in that moment of recognition of connection without a need to name it. Emma felt a warmth in her chest, a mix of longing and restraint. She was aware of her feelings in a way that was startling because she had never experienced such a calm yet compelling pull toward someone who posed no immediate romantic promise. Later that week, Emma went for a walk downtown to clear her mind. As she left a small cafe, she saw Daniel standing nearby, umbrella in hand, waiting as if he had known she'd be there. Her heart skipped a beat. "Emma," he said softly but clearly. And she noticed the slight hesitation in his voice, a rare break in his calm demeanor. "Hi," she replied, forcing herself to keep her tone casual. She tried to act natural, but her hands fidgeted slightly as she held her bag strapped tighter. "I hope I'm not intruding," he said. "I just wanted to make sure you were okay." Emma frowned slightly, confused. "Okay? I'm fine. I just needed space." He nodded slowly, understanding, yet not entirely accepting it. "I don't want to cross boundaries," he admitted. "But I can't ignore that something changed between us." Her stomach tightened. She hadn't expected honesty like this. She wasn't looking for it. And yet, hearing it aloud made her feel both frightened and relieved. "You're important to people I care about," she said carefully. "I don't want anyone getting hurt." Daniel gave a small, almost sad smile, the kind that carried understanding and patience. "Sometimes the hardest thing," he said gently, "is admitting that meaning isn't always convenient." Emma felt her throat tighten. She wanted to speak, to explain herself, but words failed her. Instead, she placed her hand over her chest and let the truth settle inside her. She didn't fully understand it yet, but she knew something had shifted. Something that wasn't just curiosity or admiration. It was deeper, more significant, and she didn't know how to handle it. A car honked across the street. Lily waved from the sidewalk, breaking the moment. Emma looked at Daniel, and he looked back. Neither moved. The distance between them suddenly felt heavier, more real. She walked to the car, heart pounding, leaving a quiet tension behind. Daniel remained where he stood, calm yet present. His figure, framed by the rainy Emma, drove home that night, replaying the entire encounter. She thought about the way he listened, the words he chose, the subtle honesty that had shaken her perspective. She realized she was seeing a part of life she had ignored, how connection could be transformative without demanding anything in return. She felt excitement and fear mixed together. A cocktail of emotions she hadn't felt in a long time. It was thrilling and unsettling all at once. By the time she reached her apartment, she knew her perspective had already begun to shift. She wasn't in love, not yet, and maybe not ever. But she was awake in a way she hadn't been before, where that meaningful people could appear unexpectedly, changing how you viewed yourself and the world. She understood now that some connections weren't about immediate action or romance. They were about awakening, about seeing possibilities beyond comfort. As she sat on her balcony looking at the city lights, she realized one simple truth. Daniel had already changed her perspective. She didn't need him to act on it. She didn't need a relationship with him. Just the moment, just the connection was enough. And somehow, that knowledge made her feel lighter, braver, and more alive than she had in years. It was a connection that shouldn't have happened. A pull that didn't need a label, and yet it had left a permanent mark. Emma understood that life sometimes gave rare encounters that didn't demand anything but presence, reflection, and courage. And she was ready to face whatever came next, knowing that her world had quietly, irrevocably shifted after that rainy evening outside the cafe. Emma knew she needed space. She couldn't let herself get swept up in feelings she wasn't ready to confront. Daniel was Lily's uncle, a man tied to her best friend's family. Any closeness beyond polite conversation felt complicated, even wrong. So she pulled back, limiting encounters, shortening conversations, and keeping her distance. But no matter how careful she was, her thoughts kept drifting back to him. She remembered his calm voice, the way he listened. And that night at the lake house when his words had cut through her usual defenses. Those moments replayed in her mind like a movie she couldn't pause. For his part, Daniel didn't push. He respected her distance, but that didn't stop him from noticing the small ways she tried to hide her feelings. He saw her hesitation when he smiled at her across a crowded room, the slight lingering of her gaze, the subtle tension in her posture when their conversation ended. Daniel understood boundaries, but he also knew that feelings rarely stayed neatly within them. And sometimes, avoiding someone only made the connection stronger. It was a chilly afternoon in Seattle, and Emma found herself leaving the library. Her bag slung over her shoulder, thoughts scattered between work and the uncertainty she felt around Daniel. She didn't expect him to appear, but there he was, standing near the street corner, coat buttoned and hands in his pockets. His presence was calm, almost casual, but seeing him there made her pulse quicken. "Emma," he said softly, not loud enough to draw attention from anyone nearby, yet clear enough to make her stop. She paused, unsure how to respond. "Hi," she murmured, trying to sound casual. But the tightness in her chest betrayed her attempt. "I hope I'm not disturbing you," he began, his voice low, careful. "I just wanted to make sure you're okay." Emma's brows furrowed. "I'm fine. I needed space." Her voice was firm, but beneath it there was tension she couldn't hide. Daniel nodded slowly, his expression understanding but tinged with concern. "I don't want to cross boundaries," he said honestly, "but I can't ignore that something changed between us, and I don't want to pretend it didn't exist." Her stomach twisted. She had been trying to keep her feelings in check. Telling herself distance would help. Yet here he was, acknowledging the invisible thread she hadn't wanted to see. It made her feel exposed, vulnerable, but also strangely relieved. "You're important to people I care about," she said carefully, almost whispering. "I don't want anyone getting hurt." Daniel gave a small, patient smile, one that carried both understanding and quiet sadness. "Sometimes the hardest truth," he said gently, "is admitting that meaning doesn't always fit neatly into what's convenient." Emma's throat tightened. She wanted to respond, to explain that she wasn't ready, that she needed time, but words failed her. She pressed a hand to her chest, feeling the rapid beat of her heart, and realized that her emotions weren't simple. They were layered with confusion, longing, and something she couldn't yet name. She didn't know if this was attraction, respect, admiration, or a mixture of all three. But she knew it mattered. A sudden honk from a car broke the moment. Lily appeared, waving from across the street with her usual cheerful energy. Emma tore her eyes from Daniel and forced herself to step toward the car. Daniel watched silently, his calm presence grounding her even as she felt the sting of distance. Neither spoke as she left. But the air between them was thick with unspoken words and unrealized possibilities. The days that followed were quieter. Emma returned to her routine's work, reading, walks along the waterfront, but nothing felt the same. She was hyper-aware of small details. A text from Lily that mentioned Daniel. A familiar voice passing her in a cafe. The quiet rustle of leaves outside her window. She realized that distance didn't erase connection. It often amplified it. Every memory of his calm demeanor, every flash of insight from their conversations, reminded her of the pull she had been trying to ignore. One weekend, Lily invited Emma to a small gathering at her home, casual and friendly. Emma hesitated but eventually agreed, telling herself it was just a social visit. Daniel was there, as expected, and their eyes met across the room. He gave her a slight nod, nothing more, and she felt a warmth spread in her chest. It wasn't desire, it was recognition. Something had shifted between them, Kay, and they both knew it. They found themselves sitting together on the porch again, after the guests had moved inside. The night was cool, with a light breeze carrying the scent of the nearby pines. Silence stretched between them for a moment, comfortable and tense all at once. Emma finally broke it, her voice barely above a whisper. "Why do I feel like I can't stop thinking about you?" Daniel looked at her carefully, his expression soft. "Because connection doesn't always follow rules," he said quietly. "It doesn't wait for timing, convenience, or permission. Sometimes it just exists." Her heart skipped a beat. She wasn't supposed to feel this way, yet here she was admitting to herself what she had tried to deny. "It's confusing," she admitted. "I shouldn't feel this way. Not with you." He nodded, understanding her fear and uncertainty. "I know, but feeling something doesn't have to mean acting on it," he said. "Sometimes the significance lies in awareness, in learning, in recognizing what changes is." Emma took a deep breath, letting his words settle. She realized he was right. This wasn't about romance or crossing boundaries. It was about the lessons of connection, the subtle impact someone could have simply by existing in your life with honesty and presence. She felt calmer, grounded, yet more alive than she had in weeks. They sat together in silence, watching the night deepen, the stars faint behind city lights. Emma thought about how quickly life could change without warning. How one conversation, one evening, or one presence could shift your perspective forever. Daniel's quiet honesty had challenged her, made her question her routines, and opened her heart to feelings she had long ignored. For the first time, she understood that meaningful connections weren't always obvious. They weren't always convenient. Sometimes they were complicated, sometimes unexpected. And sometimes they simply existed to teach you something about yourself. She didn't need an explanation, a resolution, or even a promise. She only needed to feel, to recognize, and to let herself grow. When Lily came back to check on them, laughing about something trivial, Emma felt a pang of awareness. This moment was fleeting, like all moments, yet it mattered. She didn't know what would happen next, and she didn't know how Daniel felt beneath the calm exterior. But she realized that sometimes presence alone was transformative. As she drove home later that night, Emma replayed every word, every glance, and every pause. She felt a mix of fear, longing, and excitement emotions she hadn't allowed herself to feel in years. She realized that Daniel had opened a door she hadn't even known existed, the door to awareness, to growth, and to the quiet realization that not all connections needed labels to matter deeply. She wasn't in love, not yet. And maybe not ever, but she was awake. She was aware. She was changed. And for Emma, that was enough to make the heart race, the mind think, and the world feel suddenly brighter. The following weeks passed quietly. Emma had returned to her routines, but the memory of Daniel lingered in subtle ways, small reminders that felt almost accidental. A familiar voice on the street, the quiet calm of a rainy afternoon, even a certain way the sunlight fell on her balcony. She realized that the connection she had tried to push aside was not something she could ignore. It had become part of her awareness, a soft, insistent presence in her life that refused to be forgotten. Thanksgiving was approaching, and Lily had invited Emma to spend the holiday with her family. Emma hesitated, unsure if she could handle being around Daniel for several hours. But she accepted the invitation, telling herself she could manage. She reminded herself that distance and boundaries were necessary, that feelings could exist without action. But the anticipation made her pulse quicken. A nervous excitement she hadn't felt in months. The lake house was decorated with warm lights, and the scent of roasted turkey filled the air. Family members bustled around, laughter and chatter creating a lively background. Emma entered quietly, placing her coat on a rack, and immediately sensed Daniel's presence. He was standing near the kitchen, helping Lily carry a tray of appetizers. Their eyes met for a brief moment, and she felt a warmth in her chest, a recognition that went beyond words. He smiled, a gentle, calm smile that seemed to say everything without speaking. Emma moved through the gathering, sharing casual conversations, but her mind kept returning to him. She observed him quietly, noticing the small details she had come to recognize, the way he paused to listen, the subtle kindness in his gestures, the quiet way he made people around him feel seen. She realized again that this was not about romance or desire. It was about presence, about a connection that left an impression without needing labels. Later, after the main meal had ended and the house had grown quieter, Emma found herself walking onto the porch for a moment of solitude. The night was crisp, the sky dotted with stars above the calm lake. She didn't expect anyone to join her, but Daniel appeared, his hands in his pockets, his expression reflective. He didn't speak immediately, giving her the space to breathe, to think, to process the flood of emotions she had been carrying. "I've been thinking," he said softly, breaking the silence, "about what I said that first night." Emma turned to face him, curious and cautious, about growth and fear. She asked quietly. He nodded. "Yes. I realize that sometimes people enter our lives not to be ours in the way we expect, but to change who we are, to challenge us, to make us reflect, to show us perspectives we might have missed. That night, I wasn't trying to teach you. I was only being honest about something I had learned too late in my own life." Emma felt a lump form in her throat. She understood now. The pull she had felt, the emotions she hadn't wanted to confront. The subtle longing, they were not a demand, not a complication, not a choice she had to act on. They were awareness. They were growth. And in that quiet truth, she felt relief as well as something deeper, gratitude. "I think I understand now," she whispered, "that sometimes people appear to change how we see things. Not to stay, not to take something from us, but to leave a part of themselves in our understanding." Daniel's eyes softened. "Exactly. You don't owe me anything. You don't need to respond to this. Not with words, not with decisions. Just recognize it. Let it shape you. And if it matters, let it guide you toward who you want to be." Emma nodded, the weight she had carried for weeks beginning to ease. She realized that the tension, the nervous excitement, the unspoken pull, they had all been part of a lesson she hadn't realized she needed. She had been so focused on rules, boundaries, and fear of complications that she had forgotten the value of presence, honesty, and reflection. Daniel had reminded her, without trying, that meaningful connections were not always about ownership or expectations. Sometimes they existed simply to awaken something inside. The porch grew colder, and Emma shivered slightly. Daniel noticed and offered his jacket, a quiet, thoughtful gesture. She accepted, and for the briefest moment, she felt the comfort of being seen, understood, and valued without condition. It was not romantic in the traditional sense, but it was intimate in a way that mattered more. As the evening went on, they returned inside. The family had gathered around the fireplace again, sharing stories and laughter. Emma noticed Daniel stepping back into his calm role, helpful, attentive, present, but now she saw him differently. She saw the wisdom, the patience, and the gentle strength he carried. She realized she had been changed not by actions or intentions, but by the clarity he had brought into her own mind and heart. When the night ended, and Emma was preparing to leave, she found herself standing beside him one last time. The house was quiet, the soft hum of conversations echoing in the distance. "Thank you," she said simply, her voice sincere, "for being honest, for helping me see things differently." Daniel gave a small smile, one filled with warmth and understanding. "You don't need to thank me. Just promise me you won't silence yourself. Don't ignore your growth, your awareness, or your heart." Emma felt a deep calm wash over her. She realized that the experience had been transformative not because of romance or desire, but because of perspective, honesty, and presence. It was a lesson she would carry forward, quiet imprint on her life that would guide her in ways she hadn't imagined. She stepped outside, feeling the crisp night air against her face. For the first time in a long while, she felt whole, aware, and alive. The pull she had felt, the unspoken tension, and the emotional complexity were no longer burdens. They were reminders of a connection that had helped her grow. She looked back once, seeing Daniel standing by the door, calm and steady, and felt gratitude instead of longing, clarity instead of confusion. That night, as she drove home, Emma reflected on the journey. She realized that meaningful people often appear at unexpected moments, not to stay in the ways we anticipate, but to leave an impact that transforms how we see ourselves and the world. Daniel had done that for her. He had changed her perspective, opened her heart to reflection, and reminded her that growth often comes from honesty, presence, and quiet guidance rather than action or words alone. She smiled softly, feeling a warmth in her chest. She wasn't in love, not in the way she had feared. She wasn't seeking a relationship. She didn't need answers or promises. She only needed the understanding that life could surprise you, teach you, and change you in moments you never expected. Emma felt a calm excitement for the future, a sense of readiness she hadn't experienced before. She knew that she would carry Daniel's words and presence with her, not as a weight or a longing, but as a gift, a quiet reminder that life's lessons often arrive through unexpected connections. She understood, finally, that some people come into your life to awaken you, not to stay. And that recognition alone could be enough to change everything. And with that awareness, Emma felt peaceful, inspired, and alive. She knew she had been changed forever, and that change was beautiful.